everybody, I'm Julia Dean. I'm the owner of the Clay School, if I haven't met you yet. I wanted to point out a few things that we need your help with in the studio, and I'm going to invite you to click on the link of another video to watch about more specific cleanup. We have about 90 students working out of this space right now, and it's time for us to talk about cleaning. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the sinks and how we need to keep the clay out of the sinks. This is an example of what should never happen, and that is clay in the sinks. And if you follow through this video and the next video, you will learn how not to let your clay go into the sinks like this. The other thing that I wanted to show you are towels. There have been some donated towels. I'm not sure where they came from. Towels in the studio can be very dangerous when there are this many people working out of the studio. That's because when you get clay on a towel like this and it dries, every time you move this, clay dust is going to be exposed into the air, and then we breathe it, and that is the most dangerous form of clay that you could be exposed to. It gets into your lungs and it never comes out, and so we try really hard to keep a clean studio, and we need your help with this. So if you would like to have your own towel at your shelf, I encourage you to do that. If you need a scrap towel, we have lots of donated towels we're going to leave in the studio for maybe a week or two. Please feel free to take one, but let that be your towel, and please launder it. Don't ever let it look like this in the studio. If you see a towel sitting around the sink of the studio or nearby, those towels are ours, but they should only be used to clean off your wet hands. They should never be used to clean off clay hands, okay? So let's try to work on that. The other thing we want to talk about is the slop bucket. So if you are cleaning up your wheel, which you'll see in detail in the following video, your bucket from your wheel will come here first, and everything inside that bucket goes onto this grate, but it has to be pushed through. So there should be no clay sitting on top of this ever. Push all of your wet clay through. If it's too hard to push through this grate, it belongs in the dry bucket, which is right next to it on the floor. And it's okay if that clay is a little damp. So it's in one or two places, really wet clay or clay that's too dry to go through the grate. The other thing is brushes. When you have a brush that you've used to glaze with, sometimes there's a container of brushes here. Also, they live here. Make sure you store those bristle end up, please. That'll protect the bristles on the brushes for the next person. And lastly, we want to talk about bats. So these bats should be stored flat. Now, it's not going to matter so much for the plastic ones to be stored up like this, but these wooden bats will warp if they get wet and are stored on their side. So it's better if we store them like this so that the weight of all the bats on top help to keep them flat and straight. The other thing is, when you're finished with the bat and you've cut a piece off, please take the extra clay off the bat where your piece was. Scrape it with a wooden tool, put it into your bucket if you're not finished throwing. If you're cleaning up, you can put it straight into the slop bucket with the grate on top. If it's too dry, put it into the dry scraps. But please don't leave this for the next person to clean up. Out of respect for the next person, but also for the same reason that we don't want dry clay sitting around in the studio waiting to break down and for us to breathe in. So thank you, and please, please, please click on the video and watch the cleanup video again for us. Thanks, and have fun.